Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Gavin Courtney.
And I'm Paul Lopez.
And this is a beautiful Thursday morning. We are happy to be here, of course. The weather's looking good. Of course, we're going to be getting our weather update a little later, but it does look like it's going to be a nice day today.
It does. It looks like it's going to be a hot day.
There's that too.
Which makes me even more excited for a cold front. We're anticipating a cold front later on this week, and that makes me even more excited. This makes me even more excited for that. I think we can't get past the obvious right now, though, which is the new set.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, for those watching, they probably see that we've done some restructuring in here in terms of decorating.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's all about that Halloween season.
Yeah, for sure. I know lots of people are super into Halloween. What about you?
Well, as a kid, I do recall, my mother taking us out to trick or treat. Halloween. When Halloween was coming close, we knew that it was time for us to do some trick or treating, and so for us, that meant going out, that meant going from house to house and doing that. And so we just want to big up the designer.
Yes, our set designer, Arlette Mosiah. Of course, yeah, so we definitely want to big her up. She's the one who's responsible for having our set looking so great and spooky.
Right.
Of course, I don't know, do you have a costume picked out?
I don't. I'm not usually into the costume thing unless somebody says, "Hey Paul, I want to try some face paint on you." Other than that, I wouldn't necessarily just go out and buy a mask. No.
Yeah, there's not like there's parties to go to.
Right,
so
it's not like there are parties to go to anyway. So it's Halloween mask for you to look in the mirror and scare yourself.
Right. So unless you are one of the younger ones, I think that you're probably not going to be getting too much into the costumes unless you're extremely into the Halloween and the spooky season, as they like to call it. But yeah, I don't usually do the costume thing unless I'm going out. But I do like Halloween, and of course I like the Halloween movies.
Yeah.
So there's the nice horror movies, and even your classics like Hocus Pocus. That's still my favorite Halloween movie. I watch every.
Well, that's way back.
Yep.
Yeah.
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 But of course, that is Halloween, but we do have a lot to talk about today, and moving into more serious topics, of course. As we usually do, we like to update you on the latest figures related to COVID-19. And of course, yesterday, the latest figures from the Ministry of Health did indicate that, of course, there were over 240 confirmed positive cases from the results that were released yesterday evening. And of course, what's very unfortunate to report is that there were 7 deaths that were counted yesterday. And of course, that's a very high figure, and it's concerning.
Yeah.
In terms of the breakdown of that number, of course, it was interesting to note that there were just as many vaccinated as unvaccinated deaths yesterday, and 1 partially vaccinated. So it's more or less consistent with the numbers that we've been seeing. But last night on our newscast, of course, we also discussed some even more concerning things that were coming out of from the medical community in relation to how COVID-19 patients are faring.
Yeah, indeed. Before we go there, just to point out the numbers in terms of what we're seeing in terms of positivity rate, while we're noting that the number of recoveries over the past few days continue to be higher than the number of those persons that have been identified as positive, what we saw yesterday was an a positivity rate of 15.2%, which is very high
Yes.
in terms of the number of positive COVID-19 cases detected. In terms of the cumulative positivity rate, we're seeing that is now below 10%. And so it's to be seen whether or not the Ministry of Health will go forward in determining its next plan of action, next course of action in terms of the SIs by identifying either the daily positivity rate or the cumulative positivity rate, because remember, we need to hit that below 10%
Yes.
margin. And I'm I'm a numbers type of guy, and so I keep looking at the numbers to look at that. But as you mentioned in the news, in fact, last night, we did have a representative from the medical community, the Belize Medical and Dental Association, who spoke with one of our reporters about the fact that, and we will have them on later on this morning to discuss some other topics, but they're speaking about the fact that studies across the world are showing that more and more patients who have recovered from COVID-19 are now showing signs of blood clots.
Yep.
And in fact, we're even seeing signs not only internationally, but there are also signs being, patients showing these type of signs here in Belize as well. And so they've identified certain persons in Belize showing signs of blood clot after the fact, during their recovery process from COVID-19. And so studies are being done to look at that, to determine the actual numbers and for treatment.
Yes, and that's extremely concerning. And I can recall, of course, as you probably would, that I remember this was a big issue when the vaccines started to roll out, and in particular the AstraZeneca vaccine there was a lot of buzz because there was a potential for the development of blood clots in persons who might have taken that vaccine. Of course, even with that said, the potential was extremely, extremely low, which is why the vaccine is still recommended as safe, and it's still the most widely available one locally. It's the one I took, and I didn't get any, I didn't have any adverse effect. But of course, in what we're talking about now is people who have contracted COVID-19, have already recovered, meaning that they're no longer positive, but this is now sort of a long-term effect. And I think that's something that we sometimes lose focus on, especially so long into the pandemic. I think that earlier on, I remember the first few months and last year, there was a lot of discussion about what they call long COVID, or the recovery process and how difficult it can be, and that there's so many unanswered questions about what happens to persons who do contract COVID, and what are the long-term effects. Because as we know, in the beginning of COVID, everybody thought, the symptoms were just the sore throat and the loss of smell, and then it later encompassed so many different other symptoms, and then now the same thing seems to be happening with the aftermath, in that it can affect your body in several different ways, several different parts of your system, and now we're seeing this concerning trend when it comes to blood clots among the positive cases.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right. You're so right. We oftentimes rarely focus on that recovery process and what COVID-19 patients who survived the virus are actually going through in terms of those post symptoms. And we rarely do look at it, but I oftentimes hear stories about how difficult it is, the recovery process, in terms of the shortness of breath that people experience, the lack of energy, how strenuous the simple things that they used to do are now.
Yes, well, we had our very own reporter, Marian Ali, who's come on the show, and who was also given interviews just talking about how difficult her recovery process is. And of course, in her case, she more recently recovered. And because she was hospitalized, one would expect that, of course, in the weeks afterwards, it would be a difficult process. But both international news, and I suppose we will see more in terms of what's developing locally. But persons who've contracted not even serious cases, we've seen that sometimes the long-term effects can be serious even though the initial infection wasn't serious, which is why I think it's important to note that just going back to the issue of vaccines, a lot of people say, well, I'm young, so if I catch COVID, I'll be fine, and so I don't feel like I need to catch this vaccine to take the vaccine, because even if I take the vaccine, I can get it, or whatsoever. But clearly, it's not that simple.
Right.
COVID is a lot more serious than a lot of people give it credit for, even now, even with all we know. And so this is just another example to show why it's important to take every step that's possible enough to protect yourself. I would include the vaccine in that, and of course, adhering to all of the other protocols so that you don't contract COVID in the first place, because that really is the main goal here. And then the ripple effect of that is that everybody who else does that, if everybody else is as responsible, then the virus we can stop the spread.
And on the topic of vaccines, going to the churches, we saw also in our newscast last night, Bishop Philip Wright from the Anglican Church. He basically spoke about the fact that his church, certain church leaders are asking the Prime Minister to come back to the table to discuss the issues surrounding the vaccine mandate and churches being allowed to reopen for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. That stems from an announcement made earlier this week, whereby we learned that the Prime Minister basically walked back from the vaccine mandate placed on churches. There are certain church leaders, particularly those within the National Evangelical Association of Belize, protested the mandate that restricted unvaccinated persons from entering the churches. And the Prime Minister basically walked back and said, okay, well, vaccinated and unvaccinated are now allowed to enter your churches. And they weren't trying to make any big announcement about it. However, on Monday, we spoke to someone from that church community, the NEAB, that association, and they gave us confirmation of that. Now we have the bishop from the Anglican Church saying, while we appreciate that, let's take a step back. This needs some more discussion.
Absolutely.
We need to see, all right, if we're going to have both the vaccinated and the unvaccinated in the church together at the same time, we need to add some additional rules. We need to add some additional protocols, some additional guidelines, so that those that remain high risk are not placed in a position of compromise. And so he's asking and he's saying that they'll go back to the table with the Prime Minister and they'll further discuss this, because they're not willing to open their churches unless other measures are put in place. And I think that's reasonable, and that's a sound position to have at this time.
No, absolutely, I agree. And as I said on Tuesday, Marlene and I were discussing this very briefly. The decision-making process, of course, it's a very difficult one. You have to balance a whole lot of different factors and needs. But I go back to the big picture, and I think that everything related to COVID, I think there's a lot of interests that you have to balance. But what has to guide it, of course, is the medical and scientific information.
Indeed.
This now report of the blood clots and whatever just shows again how serious COVID-19 is. And therefore, any decisions that we make do have to take into effect what the risks are if we allow certain activity to continue. And I do hope that the solution that eventually works out is one that is based on medical and scientific information. Because at the end of the day, that should be the safest option for everyone.
Indeed.
But of course, we do have a lot to get into this morning, and we got to keep our show moving. So We've got some morning motivation as we usually do, so it's time for our eye opener, and that is taken from dailyom.com. And our eye opener this morning goes something like this. Our true selves exist whether we acknowledge them or not, often buried under learned behavior. Identity is an elusive concept. We feel we must define ourselves using a relatively small selection of roles and conscious character traits, even if none accurately represents our notion of self. The confusion surrounding our true natures is further compounded by the fact that society regularly asks us to suppress so much of our emotional, intellectual, and spiritual vibrancy. Yet we are, in truth, beings of light, pure energy, inhabiting physical bodies, striving for enlightenment while living earthly lives. When we recognize our power, our luminosity, and our divinity, we cannot help but live authentic lives of appreciation, potential, fulfillment, and grace. Once you do find this authentic self, however, you will be overcome by a wonderful sense of wholeness as you reconcile your spiritual aspect and your physical aspect, as well as your inner and outer world personas. As you gradually adjust to this developing unity, your role as a being of light will reveal itself to you, and you will discover that you have a marvelous destiny to fulfill.
You know,
Powerful words.
Powerful. It reminds me of a motivational message I was listening to this morning where the speaker was saying, it's okay to care about what people think about you, but it's not okay to allow people's opinions to control your life.
Yeah.
And for me, that resounded because a lot of our self-discovery oftentimes begins with how we think the world views us,
Oh, yeah.
or the opinions of the world around us, and that shapes us so often. And most time to get to the place where the motivation speaks about, it's to have some sort of solid foundation about how we view ourselves and what we think of ourselves. So
No, for sure. And I think that you said it right. And I think that a lot of the times we, you know, as young children, we have certain interests or we have feelings and you know, and you which you might want to pursue, or you know, you have an interest in whether it's music or dancing or science, even whatever it is. But very early on, you may encounter somebody saying, you know, you shouldn't do that, or that's not for you, or that's for boys, or that's for girls, you know, stuff like that. Or even it may not even be directly directed at you. You may just hear somebody say something about somebody else, or make a comment, and then you think, oh well, this is something wrong, or this is something I shouldn't do, or and then that self-consciousness sets in, and that self-doubt, and then that creates a whole domino effect of the insecurities that develop later on. And it's usually we have to unlearn all of that in order to, you know, accept what, you know, the true self is.
Right.
But when we do, you realize, you know, that how much power there is in that, and how much, you know, just from all of that ownership. So of course, that's our eye opener for this morning. But we got to keep moving. We got to get into our weather update, and we do have our forecaster on the line. We've got Angelia Guy. Good morning.
Good morning.
good morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm good, and you?
I'm doing great, Angelia. Hoping for some good news for this weather. What does our general situation look like?
We have fair and warm weather to continue today, and then we have a cold front approaching later on this evening.
Okay, well that sounds great to me. But over the next 24 hours, what's the full forecast?
Okay, we expect warm temperatures today and a few showers and isolated thunderstorms to develop inland this afternoon due to the warm temperatures. And then ahead of the approaching cold front, we expect an increase in showers, thunderstorms, and periods of rain over most areas tonight.
Okay. And what about our winds?
Okay, winds continue to be light today, generally from the east at 5 to 10 knots.
Okay, what about our temperatures? What are the highs that we're expecting?
Okay, high temperatures today will reach about 91 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, possibly warmer over some south coast, 96 inland and 84 in the hills.
And tonight?
Tonight, the low temperatures will fall to about 76 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 72 inland, and 67 in the hills.
Okay, and our outlook as we head into Friday and the rest of the weekend?
Okay, we expect some lingering showers, thunderstorms, periods of light rain tomorrow, and then this should decrease by tomorrow night.
Okay, and you had mentioned some thunderstorms and potential thunderstorms ever. Do we have any advisories or warnings to give people today?
Okay, well, a small craft caution will likely go into effect tonight, and this would be due to the winds that come along with the cold front later on tonight and tomorrow.
All right, well, I'm excited about the cold front, so hopefully, so thank you very much for that update, Angelia.
You're welcome.
Okay, and we hope you have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, Gavin, I'm seeing weather temperatures along the coast tonight around 76%. That's lower than our average 80%, and I'm a Belizean, so 80 degrees for me is cold.
Right.
So below that, I mean, it's time to pull out those blankets. That's all I'm going to say.
No, well, you know what? I talk about this all the time on this show. This is the type of weather I'm a big fan of.
Same.
So I'm pretty excited, and I'm glad that we're like here at this time of year. And you know, we're almost nearing the end of the hurricane season,
Indeed.
I think, and I think that so far we've been pretty lucky. Of course, we've got to see what the rest of November has in store. But you know, I think it's nice. It's always good to take stock and see, you know, that this so far has been a good, an all right year. But you know, with that said, we've got to get into our show, and we've got lots of interesting conversations lined up for this morning. And while we're still on the topic of weather and the environment, our first guest this morning is going to be Minister Orlando Habet, who is the Minister of Sustainable Development, Climate Change, and Disaster Risk Management. And he's going to be talking all about COP26 and what we can expect to Belize's contribution to be to that big meeting, and that's going to be our first conversation this morning.
And in our second conversation, as I mentioned earlier this morning, we have members from the Belize Medical and Dental Association. We actually have the president, Dr. Uldeen Wright, who will be speaking to us about their annual congress, which is focusing on medicine in the times of COVID. Why is this discussion important? Medicine in time of COVID. We'll find out more. We'll hear more from Dr. Wright.
And finally, we are going to be getting an update from Baked, and they're going to be talking about some of their new treats, and they're going to be introducing some of the products that you can get at their cafe, and that's going to be our final conversation. So if you are interested in learning about some food, and I'm seeing something on our program about cheesecake, which is my favorite dessert. So you definitely don't want to miss that. But that's our show for this morning. And we're going to get right into it. But we are going to take a short break. But before we do have a birthday shout out this morning.
Yes, we want to say happy birthday to Karen Rosito. Happy birthday, Karen, and we do hope that you have a wonderful day from all of us here at Open Your Eyes and Channel 5.
Yep. So enjoy your day. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of dancing.
Right.
So we hope you enjoy it. We hope you enjoy today. Have fun, and of course, we wish you many more. But with that, we're going to be taking a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by the Honorable Orlando Habet. So please stay tuned.
Are you a teacher or public sector employee who is thinking of owning your new home? Get the keys to your new home with Belize Bank's all-inclusive mortgage, the best financing option in Belize for your new home purchase or construction. Inclusive of all mortgage-related fees, no down payment, affordable terms, amazingly low interest rates. Visit our nearest branch to speak to one of our financial advisors to discuss how you can be one step closer to owning your new home. Some conditions apply.
We have been a partner with Smart for over 10 plus years. We have a full Smart plan we use as our major driver for our business. We have a service that rolls over in that if you call one and it is busy, it rolls over to the next line. So once you call us, you can get us at any time. Before we got this Smart service, we were paying upwards of nearly $2,000 in phone bills. Since we've had our Smart service, we pay an average about $600. So we've had tremendous saving, more than 50%. For the businesses, if you want to save money, switch to Smart because it is far more cost effective and the service is excellent.
Smart continues to be innovative in bringing new technology and meaningful savings during these challenging times to businesses across Belize. Sign up for our VoIP technology or broadband packages and save more.
How does the AstraZeneca vaccine work? The vaccine provides support to help your body develop immunity to the virus that causes COVID-19. The body is left with a supply of memory cells that will remember how to fight the virus. It takes a few weeks for the body to produce the antibodies after vaccination. How long does it take to build immunity after taking the first dose of the vaccine? There is protection 14 days after a person's first dose. However, that initial protection may decline over time, which is the reason why it is so important to get the second shot. How long after the first dose should one take the second dose? The second dose should be given between week 8 and week 12. Are there any deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine? There have been no deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Vaccines save lives. They remain the safest, most effective, and cost-effective medical tool developed. Increased uptake of the vaccine is the best way to stop this pandemic, save lives, and return to normalcy.
ESJ's area of work, the MGL, has a vast diversity of wildlife and plant species that provide ecological services and are part of our cultural heritage. ESJ monitors biodiversity and supports research to help protect threatened species and their habitats. With the help of citizen scientists, biodiversity data is collected within protected areas and agroforestry farms. ESJ is committed to make sound decisions rooted in good science for sustainable development of our natural resources.
Reduce your risk of viral illness like the flu or the coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water or with an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing or sneezing with a tissue. Throw away, then wash hands immediately. Avoid close contact with anyone who has the cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or nearest health center and share your travel history. A health and wellness message from your Ministry of Health.
Great Belize Productions Channel 5, proud winner of 5 Caribbean Media Awards for 2019 and 2020. Best Television News Item, Best Responsible Coverage of Children's Issues, Best Health Education Journalism, Best Television Commercial Spot, and the People's Choice Award, with special mention by the jury in the Best Television News Item category.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we're just getting our first conversation for this morning started. And as we mentioned before the break, we are talking all about COP26, and climate change, and what we can expect from Belize's participation in the upcoming conference to look like. And joining us for this conversation, we have the Honorable Orlando Habet, who is the Minister of Sustainable Development, Climate Change, and Disaster Risk Management. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning to you. Good morning, Belize. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you today. I think we are living through some really interesting times, challenging times, of course, but I think that there's nothing that's out there that we cannot solve. So I think that if we put our heads together and we have the support from our people, our ministries, the public service, and of course, if we do our homework, if we do our job, I think we can come to some solutions. As a government, I think we have a big challenge. Being in government for the past 10, 11 months, almost going on out, and we have another month before a few weeks, I think, before we complete a year. I think we will be looking at that within the next 2 to 3 weeks to see the accomplishments of the government during the first year of being in this new administration.
Absolutely. And I like what you said about, putting heads together to solve the problem, and that's kind of what COP26 is supposed to be about. Yes. So maybe, for the benefit of some of our viewers, perhaps you could describe, what exactly COP26 is and what's its importance.
Yes. COP26 stands for the Conference of the Parties for the United Nations Climate Change Conference, the UNFCCC. What this one represents is that since I think it was COP21 2015 when they came up with the Paris Agreement, and countries gathered together and looking at climate change really seriously and started making those commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions so that you can try to lower the percentage increase in temperature, and trying to reach a certain goal by 2030, 2050, and to the end of the century. They met every year except for 2020 due to COVID, and so the 5th year conference actually is occurring now in November, so it's that COP26, 5 years after the Paris Agreement, actually 6, but the fifth conference. So this one will be really important because it is sort of a gauge to see where we are at after 2015 with the Paris Agreement and those commitments. And then also to look at the new commitments which the countries have made and to see where they're going, whether it's another 5 year or if they're looking at 10 years. And so part of the conversation we'll have is regarding that. But basically, countries have committed to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, trying to lower the temperature. We know that the effects of climate change are disastrous, especially for small states like ours. We are geographically in an area where we get affected by hurricanes, storm surges, floods, globally because of the glacial melting of the ice caps. There's sea level rise. Because of the high temperatures, there's an increase in the temperatures of the ocean. Because of that, we get higher waves, and then you have coastal erosion and all those effects. On the flip side, you have events of flooding, which many times are unprecedented, like what we have had last year with Iota and Eta, where we had floodwaters coming down the Belize River and into the sea and staying for 6, 7, 8 weeks at a time, which was really unprecedented. And in 2019, we saw the effect of the drought, which went on for like 5, 6 months, which is also unprecedented. So we have extreme temperatures that are really intensive, which is what makes it different from what we are normally accustomed to.
I think one of the things that's important to highlight along with climate change is the mitigation in terms of preparing for those factors that come along with climate change, in terms of floods that you mentioned, in terms of the heavy rainfalls, in terms of stronger hurricanes, for example, these all come with certain risk. And in order to prepare for them, small countries like Belize must have the finances it takes finance, correct? Speak to how COP26 and how these conferences assist countries like Belize in shoring up their finances to prepare for these types of disasters.
Well, in terms of climate change, what is really done is to look at mitigation, which will be how we can reduce the emissions, right? So Belize and many other countries, especially the small ones, aren't some of the big emitters, because we have, for example, Belize has conserved and preserved a large portion of its territory in forests, in mangrove, in coastlines and littoral forests. And so what happens is that we don't emit as much as the G20 or the larger countries. And so our mitigation actions don't necessarily have to be as much as theirs. Of course, we will still do our share because we can see where we can reduce emissions. Our concern more is on the adaptation side also, because we have to do things that we will be able to adapt to the effects of climate change. So we have to do things that will build resilience against the effects of climate change. And so for COP26, we will be looking at mitigation. One, because you have the large countries who made commitments, and we need to see where they are with their commitments. If we are doing and fulfilling the actions for reducing emissions and fulfilling our commitments, we want to see that the big countries also do their share. Also, we need to really look at adaptation, because adaptation is expensive. Because let's say if we have coastal erosion, which we do have, which are slow onset events, they're not like a hurricane and flood that comes and then you see the effect right away. But we have seen the coastal erosion happening, but it's something that's happening for years. So we need to see how we can build resilience and try to mitigate some of that action. Is it replanting seagrass, which might be expensive? Is it building an artificial reef? Is it restoring some of the reef that we have lost? It's out there, it's expensive. Inland, some of the restoration measures that we'll have to do. Also, we have to do maybe some reforestation of some of those degraded lands. We have to do some measures in the agriculture sector, because we have done agriculture in such a fashion that we have the small people who have done slash and burn. It's not good, especially if you do it in the hills. The larger type of mechanical agriculture, where we just open the land, take down the trees, put in the bulldozers and then tractors, and you plow one harrow, and then you start some desertification, and you lose the quality of your soils and everything else. So we have to now start planting some trees, doing some agroforestry. For those like myself who's a small cattle farmer, but they have large cattle farmers, can we now look at how we can do what they call silvopastoral type livestock farming, so that you can incorporate some trees into your pastures instead of just the grasses? Can we now look at the Ministry of Agriculture, how they can help the farmers understand that, listen, I pass through your farm and you have 100 acres and maybe you have 100 head of cattle, but maybe you can only hold 50, because when I pass I see stones instead of grass. So people understanding that maybe 50 fat head of cattle are better than 100 thin ones, and things like that. And but we also start restoring the land. Now, those are measures which COP is going to look at, but our interest also is the finance, as you mentioned.
Right. How do
because
we hold
for us,
bigger countries
exactly,
responsible?
Right. So what they did was, during the Paris Agreement, they had agreed that the countries, the large countries, would come up with financing, and the measure that they had put up was to come up with $100 billion in financing for climate change to assist small, vulnerable countries like ours. What we know now is that they are short of that going into COP26, so that's a major concern. But not only that, is that where and how that money is also shared, Because if it's going to be shared to the middle income countries, to the larger countries who are doing the larger emissions, and the smaller countries who need to adapt aren't getting sufficient funding to do those measures, then we are in trouble. So we need to have those finances. Right now, from the total climate fund that they have, only about 20-24% goes to adaptation. From that, only 2% comes to small islands, developing states. So it's very little coming to us. But we have the opportunity at COP to do those negotiations, to participate in these meetings. We have to be serious about what we're doing, participate in all these negotiations, and also there will be side events where we can participate in so that we can tell people what we are doing. Because many times governments can say one thing, but if they are pressured by their own people, then they have to not only commit, but fulfill some of those actions that they have committed to do. So that's something that we have to really look at. Our delegation is, I think, a very good delegation going this time. We have participation from the Ministry of Sustainable Development because we have the Climate Change Office. We have participation from the Blue Economy also, who are looking at oceans and everything else. We will be looking at the forestry, land uses, agriculture. And so we have somebody going to look at the area of finance and other areas of the negotiation that are important. And so we believe that we can come back with something. We have opportunities to meet with individual companies. We have opportunities to have bilaterals with countries like Norway, with England, and so that we can have some bilateral commitments to see how they can help us, because they understand that they have done a large part of the damage. They understand that they have to help us. I mean, the countries who have all the forests and all the mangroves and all the peatlands produce the oxygen that we breathe. So it is important for them. But there are problems there also because the Paris Agreement has other areas to fulfill, and one of those is the Paris Rule Book, which looks at transparency, cooperation. They have something called loss and damage. Under loss and damage, what the countries have looked at is that, for example, we were talking about coastal erosion, which are slow onset events. So they are saying, we can't fund your restoration of that damage. Let us see how we can put in measures to stop the damage from continuing. Well, what happens to what has already been done? So we need to make certain that we can also get financing and funding to remedy some of those problems. I mean, we see what has happened in Dangriga town,
we have
Monkey River.
Erosions, yeah.
Exactly. So we need to do some work there. So we need to get that kind of funding. What they're saying is, well, we can get that money from the adaptation fund, and we are saying no. We need a separate fund for loss and damage, and the adaptation fund is to build resilience in other areas that we can prevent the effects of climate change. An important part of negotiation will be what they call the Article 6, which deals with markets. One of them, very important for us, is carbon market and non-market negotiations also. In the carbon side is where a country can sell those carbon credits beyond your commitments. So we produce our nationally determined contributions, which is our commitment to the reduction of emissions in the climate change context. So every country has to submit that. Right now, another part of the negotiation within Article 6 is what they call common time frames. So do we agree that we submit every 5 years and commit to those 5 years, or do we do it every 10 years? Some countries are saying every 5 years, some are saying every 10. Our concern with every 10 is that by the time you look at 10 years, you might not have been doing the actions based on your commitments, And so if the target for reduction is to get the world to not increase over 1.5 degrees, which is the target right now, and you notice that you're at 3 degrees, then 10 years might be too long. So what they do is that somewhere in between each 5-year commitment, they have what they call the global stock take, where they will look at this assessment and see where we are. And so if we said Belize is going to reduce, let's say, 5,000 kilotons of carbon dioxide emissions in 5 years, and we are just at 1,000 after 2.5 years, then our average of maybe 20 per year isn't there. So now we have to step up to 30 or 35 for the next 2.5 years to complete our 100%.
That's go ahead.
I was actually, I was going to ask that, based on a lot of what you said just now, I think, it's interesting to me, because this is your ministry.
Yes.
So, in terms of making the case for Belize and all that we do need to get and to accomplish, your ministry is the one which really does all the groundwork, or most of, I should say.
Yes.
I think, what are the ways in which, over the past year, that the ministry has been able to do that sort of groundwork, collect the data, and present it in a way that now that we have this coming up to enable us to make the case for all of the things that we do need to or that we want to accomplish.
Sure. Very good question and very important. Our first submission for our NDC was in 2016 after the 2015 Paris Agreement. And so we took that as a base to develop the now 2021 submission. We have an overall 5% increase in our commitments overall. However, while that might sound small, it is really not comparable to the 2016 because we did not do the agriculture, forests, and other land use in 2016, which is large because now that represents about 63% of our commitments now. So what was done was that we didn't have a lot of data then. Yeah. And so a lot of estimates were made from data maybe collected from FAO or other organizations. Now we have done the work. We have had assistance from the UNFCCC who have assisted us. We have had assistance through a project which was the Red Plus project, which assisted us in looking and mapping and getting the forest reference levels for our forests so that we can know what we have, what we're emitting. We have looked at all the various sectors. We have assistance from the Coalition for Rainforest Nations that are also assisted us, not only in doing the estimates and not estimates, but getting the figures, but also in how we formalize our NDCs. And of course, our own staff from the ministry. So now we believe that we have a more accurate NDC that can be verified by the United Nations, and they have. As a matter of fact, the projects that we have done and the models that we have used have been evaluated, and they commend us on what we have done. As a matter of fact, we have other countries who are trying to grab some of our technical staff to go and do theirs, or maybe even hire them to go out. So we have very good technical people, and they have done a lot of work, and I commend them for that. I really appreciate the work that they have done, together with the consultants and everybody that came in. And so we know, because part of the transparency is also to make sure that what you say you have is what you say you have. Mm-hmm. What you, if I, let's say that I'm going to reduce so many tons of carbon emissions, then you have to make sure that what you say you're going to reduce is what you're going to reduce. So we looked at the agriculture, forestry, and land use sector. We looked at reductions in the energy sector, including transport. So in the transport sector, of course, part of the reduction will be Belize will have to join the rest of the world, maybe slowly, but getting there slowly, through the use of electric vehicles so that you can reduce the emissions from fuel, diesel. In the energy sector, we're thinking that we can go up to about 75% from now to 2030 in renewable energy sources, so putting more solar panels, possibly getting into wind farms to reduce energy. Also possibly getting into more hydroelectricity, maybe not large ones, but small ones that don't require storage, but just turbines to produce energy, and so get into the green energy. A few gases that have also been considered, because we also have gases and losses through the agriculture sector, so that's why we want to do the planting of trees and silvopastoral systems. Waste management. We have a lot of waste produced through all the cities and towns, and so they go to garbage sites. These produce methane. Methane produces a lot more greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, so we have to see how we can reduce those, and we have committed to reduce those. We have also committed to reduce some in the livestock sector. Might be a little bit more difficult, but we think that we can with different systems, because cattle during the digestion process belch out methane, and so, but it's an industry for us, so we have to be careful.
So that's actually going to be my next question about sort of the work they work with, and maybe the feedback you get from the stakeholders in these different industries, agriculture, and and people who are affected by, the communities affected by, let's say, flooding or erosion. So, you're gathering the data, but also that you're gathering, let's say, the objective data. But what do the people say? What is the main feedback that you get from your ministry?
Yes, all the work that was done through plenty consultation. So the different areas in agriculture, forestry, the energy sector, and of course the communities, indigenous communities, because a lot of them take care of the forest and the water, which is very important for us. Of course, they're looking seriously at the areas of adaptation, because it's more of their concern. But one thing that is very important for us in the negotiation is for these countries to see that these finances that we want for mitigation, for adaptation, for loss and damage, ultimately is for the people, because we have to improve their livelihoods. And so we have to look at it from that standpoint. So this is something that will benefit communities, indigenous peoples who are in those more vulnerable areas. And so I think the participation has been great. It is mentioned in our NDC publication that we had the consultations with the different sectors. So I think it's acceptable. In terms of, for example, where you will have to see how you reduce some of the emissions through livestock, we still have to see, maybe do that implementation plan of how we're going to do it. And we will certainly need the participation of the producers, so we'll get the assistance of the Ministry of Agriculture to work. So it's all encompassing. Mm-hmm. What is also important to note is that climate change and its effects affects the attainment of our commitment for the Sustainable Development Goals, right? So we have 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which talk about poverty, water, access to electricity, access to food, and everything else. So we have to make that commitment. But even in terms of food and food security, one of the Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 12, talks about consumption and production. So we have to be careful with that, because sometimes we produce more than we need to produce, or we produce and the biggest effect is that there's a lot of spoilage. So why produce it if you're going to spoil? Because now you're taking out the resources from the soil, and then it's lost. I was at a conference in France about 6 weeks ago, and I mentioned this, and everybody looked at me and they were surprised. I said, listen, what we also need to do is that, because this is all-encompassing, let's see how the rest of the world looks at this. Let's see how the World Trade Organization also looks at this. Because, for example, in our banana industry, not all the bananas are exported that we produce. Why? Because there are certain standards and stipulations that are put by these first world countries that they tell you, okay, if the banana isn't this size, it can't have a spot that can't go. And so we have tons and tons of bananas that are thrown away. For us as Belizeans, in a way, it's good because we can get 8 or 10 bananas for $1. But that's not the price, that's not the cost of the banana, really. But if we are going to export, let's say, 1 million boxes of bananas, and for us to export 1 million because 30% cannot go, then we are damaging some of the forest that we didn't have to deforest, because now we have to produce it in a larger amount of area to get that 1 million boxes, while we could have possibly done it with 30% less because you're taking all the bananas we go. And so I think that one of the important things for us in these side events, especially where young people are involved, where community activists and everything, is to mention these things so that they can understand that their country is importing from us, but these are some of the standards that they put on us. And so that's why we can't move forward. So we have to be careful because traditionally that's what has happened. The big ones put their foot on us.
Allow me to step back a bit in terms of looking at the Paris Agreement. What was Belize's commitment in the Paris Agreement? And I believe you briefly mentioned it. And how well have we progressed in keeping to that commitment? Because there's also a part where we must hold ourselves responsible. And when we go to these types of conferences, the question will arise,
yes.
How well have you done?
Right. So for our new NDCs, I think if I remember correctly, it's about 5,600 kilotons of reduction in emissions from now to 2021, 2030. There will be a global stocktake in 2023. And they will do the evaluation and measurements to see where we are in terms of our commitments. And so not only us, but the rest of the world to see how we are progressing. Because during the stock taking also, if they see that you're falling behind, there is something they call ratcheting of the ambition, so that then you step up and increase the ambition and increase the actions. But ultimately, maybe for some of the other countries might not be as important, but for us small island states in Central America, in the Caribbean, some of the Pacific islands who are the vulnerable countries and have all these expenses, we really depend on the finance. So a lot of our NDCs, and some of the countries, the larger countries, don't like to see that when we put our NDCs and say, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, but it is conditional on the financing. Well, we have to, because that is it. Let's put it this way. For years and years and years, Belize, for example, has had this 60% forest coverage. Nobody asked us to do it. We did it because we thought we knew that was the right thing. That was the right thing to do. But it is an opportunity cost. So we have lost in development when the other countries were taking out the coal and taking out the fuel and everything else. 2 or 3 years ago, we put a moratorium on offshore drilling.
Right.
What if we have $10–20 billion of fuel down there? But we gave it up. But we got nothing in return. Yes, we're getting, because we're reducing the risk of an oil spill so that it doesn't affect our tourism industry or anything else. But those countries like Norway and the USA and the Arab countries, they didn't care. They went ahead. But we conserve our forests, we're conserving our water and everything else. We're conserving our mangrove, our coral reef. And so we want now that they recognize that and they can assist us with that financing, because it's time for them to pay back in a way.
Minister, as I anticipate time quickly winding up on us, I just want to switch gears a bit.
Sure.
Still on sustainable development, one of the criticisms, concerns out there is that we're heading into this COP26 heralding the need for support to Belize for adaptation, and we're heralding our accomplishments, yet we see out at sea several port developments being conducted. One of the more recent one in the news has to do with the Stake Bank development. And as we learned recently from a cabinet release, the chief environmental officer, in DOE has been instructed to present a report on the ECP documents for Stake Bank. When do we anticipate that report will be finalized and presented to cabinet?
We are hoping that he can finalize this document by next week. Unfortunately, Prime Minister and many of us will be out. So I think a presentation won't be made until the following cabinet meeting, which might be when they return about the 9th of November. And we should have that ready. But certainly, it has to do with our long-term plans for national development. And we need to know where it is that we want to go in 50 years or 100 years. And I think that we have traditionally, both administrations looked at 4-year plans or 5-year plans because that's the time for the next election. And we have to get together with all parties, other stakeholders, even the churches, everybody, to look at longer term plans to see where we want to be in 50 years. And so if we believe that for the expansion of the tourism industry, if that's where we want to go, at least to a certain percentage of our GDP, then we need to decide, is it cruise tourism? Is it overnight tourism? Is it both, some of each, and how much? We also depend on other agencies like the Port Authority, who would make a recommendation and say, listen, this is the condition of our coast, communities nearby. We believe that we can only do with one, or we can only do with 2 ports in a certain location, then that has to be there. From the highest level, maybe we also have to look at economic standpoint. Is this what we need? Is it feasible? Do we have the road conditions? Do we have the transportation for these tourists that are coming in? From the environmental side and the tourism side, we have to look at the visitor sites. Are there enough visitor sites for so many people? Or how many can our visitor sites take? Because you don't want an overkill, because you'll destroy the parks or the forest or the rappelling areas or the caves or whatever it is. So we have to look at all of that before we make a decision. The problem, and maybe myself was more critical when I was in opposition, but now that you're there, you've seen what happens, is that a lot of the work is thrown onto the Department of Environment, but perhaps, and unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way, because the Department of Environment really looks at the environmental side. They're not looking at the social side because it's not their responsibility, and it's not their responsibility to look at the economic side. But for something to be sustainable, it has to be economically viable, it has to be socially viable, and it has to be environmentally viable.
We've seen the 2013 ECP. We've also seen the 2016 or 2017 ECP, I believe. Does a 2019 ECP exist?
Yes. Yes, there is one.
Have you seen the documents?
Yes, I have seen it.
Does it include the causeway?
It does include the causeway.
Okay. Yeah. Can you say, so that is to then state that that ECP was approved under the former administration?
The date that is on the document, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is the 20th of August, 2019. So that would put it like a year and 2 months before the general elections of November 11, 2020, yes.
Mm-hmm. What are the concerns that has caused Cabinet to request a report from Mr. Alegria?
I believe that concerns from maybe some of the NGOs that have voiced their concerns, saying that they didn't know about it, and that possibly they wanted to have consultations, and possibly rightly so. So how the decision was made, we don't know, because we weren't in government. I heard the opposition on the news and some statements made that they didn't authorize it. We don't know if they did or they didn't. According to the law, the chief environmental officer is a person who has the authority to sign. In 2020, somewhere around August of 2020, they did some changes to the regulations, putting the CEO, who would be the chairman of NEAC, the National Environmental Appraisal Committee, to be the person to sign. But that was 2020. This was signed 2019, a year before. So my thing is, how can you say you are not aware of it if it was signed in August 2019, and that's 14 months before you came out of office? So it's a question and thing to look at.
Well, I'm sure there will be more developments in that situation, that we'll see eventually. But as Paul had mentioned, we are just about out of time. But just in the remaining few minutes that we do have, just asking if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share in anticipation of COP26, and anything that you'd like to share with our viewers, for them to know as you and the rest of the delegation leave.
Yes, certainly. I think now that we're going to COP, and we have our objectives of trying to make certain that we participate in these meetings in a formal way, trying to, we have to be there in those negotiations, trying to join with CARICOM in some of the negotiations, maybe some on our own, but through bilaterals. We are also members of the Alliance for Small Island States, AOSIS. Belize was the chair in 2020. Now it's gone to Antigua, Barbuda. I am not certain if it goes to the Pacific Islands next. But there are some issues that we come together during meetings to agree on, if we do. And so we have a common negotiation position. With CARICOM, we have most of our common negotiating positions. Some may differ a little bit, and maybe some of them are individual per country, and likely the same thing with the SICA countries. But we want to go to COP. We need for them to know our situation, which they know, but we need to recolocate this, that say this is our position. We need to make certain that we ask that we all come together to agree to this 1.5 degree centigrade temperature goal. We need to make certain that we have the commitments for NDCs, our long-term emission development strategies. We need to make certain that the Paris rulebook is completed, hopefully. We need to look at the issue of, which is very important for us, Article 6 that deals with carbon, because it's an area where Belize can get some finances. We just heard about the blue bonds and that negotiation. We have enough carbon credits that we can sell, but part of that is also that if a country or an individual company wants to buy some of our reduction emissions that we have extra apart from our NDCs, that they pay us for it, but one thing in the Article 6 is that you shouldn't have double counting. So if I reduced 5 million tons of carbon and I sold it to a company in the US, I can't claim that 5 million reduction and they claim it. So one or the other. Yeah. So things like that. So it's double counting. But I also want to mention to Belizeans, especially to the young people, listen, climate change will affect our young people, right? And so I want to see more participation. I want to see people involved. Perhaps we have to do more education so that people can know what's happening. But we want the involvement of the communities. We know some of the NGOs are involved. We want to see our young people involved because advocacy groups, as a matter of fact, we have a young person about 15 years going with us as a youth representative. But we want to have youth teams. I want to see the universities having advocacy groups for climate change and other areas. It is so important. It's something that affects our daily lives. Mm-hmm. So we want the participation of the entire country.
Well, I think that's certainly something that we hope for too. I think that's a good place to end, as we are just about out of time. But Minister, thank you for coming in this morning and sharing all about COP26 and the work that your ministry does. And we, of course, wish you the best as you do travel to Scotland in the coming days.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here and to speak to the nation about this very important event.
All right.
Thank you.
And with that, we are going to be taking a very short break. And when we come back, we are going to be speaking with the Belize Medical and Dental Association. So please stay tuned, and we will be right back.
Are you looking to invest in a growing free trade economy with ideal geographical positioning and existing economic partnership agreements with countries around the world? Perfectly nestled between Central America and the Caribbean, Belize is open for business with over $500 million in investment opportunities in industries such as agriculture, aquaculture, tourism, and much more. Register today to participate in the Belize Investment Summit 2021 and find the investment opportunity that's right for you.
To decrease your risk of being bitten by infected mosquitoes, use proven personal protective methods too. Apply an effective mosquito repellent to exposed areas of skin according to manufacturer's instructions. Wear light-colored long pants and shirts while outdoors in the early morning and late afternoons. Further, protect vulnerable family members like pregnant women, children, the elderly, and persons who are unwell by using mosquito nets to sleep or rest, even during the day. Fight the bite and protect yourself and your family too from mosquito-borne diseases.
Hey son, how was your first day at sixth form?
Really cool. It was great to see my friends, and I really love my teachers.
I'm so happy to hear that. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your first day, but I'll be back from Corozal next week.
It's okay, Dad. I can't wait to see you. Oh, and please remember, I still have some books I need to purchase.
Ah, yes. Let me e-cash you that right now. Money has been sent. I add a little extra cash just for you.
Whoa, Dad. Thanks. Got it.
You're welcome, sir.
Download the eCash app today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257. eCash, the future is here.
Bringing people together has always been SMART's mission and passion. That is why we are proud to have built a locally independent quality network from the ground up that spans the country with over 100 sites. We continue to add more affordable mobile data packages, broadband speeds, and voice services to meet your personal and business needs. SMART has set the standard of true competition with the most competitive prices on all services offered. We invite and welcome you to join the SMART family, where the value for your dollar matters. SMART will continue bringing new technologies, more affordable prices, network expansions, and people together. SMART, bringing people together.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we are going to be giving you our COVID-19 update. And we are talking this morning with representatives from the Belize Medical and Dental Association. And they're going to be speaking all about their annual congress, which focuses on medicine in the time of COVID. That's this year's theme. And here to talk to us all about that is Dr. Uldeen Wright, who is the president of the Belize Medical and Dental Association. Good morning, Dr. Wright.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for coming on the show. We definitely appreciate it. Now, of course, in 2021, it would seem almost like a foregone conclusion that a medical conference would be speaking about at least something related to COVID-19. But before we get into what the actual Congress is, can you talk about, what the annual Congress really is and how the association went about choosing the theme for this year?
Okay, so this is our 37th annual medical congress, annual congress. Last year, we were unable to have a congress because we were in the height of COVID. We were very busy. A lot of us were sick. Some were, we just had an overload of patients and unable to meet because of the size. So we skipped last year, but this is the 37th Congress. It started, the first Congress was in 1983 that was recorded as a Congress or classified as a Congress. But years before that, they had been having continuing medical education sessions that led to the development of this Congress. So it's been something going on, like I said, 37 years, and we're just keeping up with the tradition.
For sure. And, medicine in the time of COVID, I think that's an interesting theme to go with because I think that, and, you can, of course, tell me more details about this or correct me if I'm wrong even. But, given that the pandemic, I think the pandemic has caused a shift and change, caused everybody, let's say, or all sectors of society to have to change certain things. And I'm wondering if that's also the case when it comes to treatment of COVID-19. So how has medical practice changed since the onset of the pandemic?
Okay, so just for clarification, it's COVID-19, but the theme is actually medicine in the times of novel corona.
Okay.
So this is what we will have 100 years from now when they look back, when doctors in the future look back and see, oh, they had this Congress and this was their theme. The last pandemic we had was in 1918. Unfortunately, we don't have anything to say how the doctors were coping then, except for a letter that was circulating among the doctors from a medical doctor in the district of Cayo, who was reporting on how he's dealing with the patients and when it comes to the isolations and food and so forth. We're in a virtual era now, so everything that we have would be updated to the website. So all these lectures are updated to the website, and so hopefully, if our future generation try to conserve this material, they will have this to look back then. So yes, medicine have definitely changed. At this time, right now, we're still living through it. So to look at it in a retrospective area and say, oh, this is how it has changed, it's kind of difficult because we're still changing. Mm-hmm. For example, a lot of our medical doctors are doing virtual consultations. Back when you're in medical school, they're telling you that you have to touch your patients, you have to, be there with the patients. Some older schools will be like you go into the homes of the patient and you see how they live, check out their risk factors, but medicine has slowly been evolving, and so now we have a lot of medical practitioners having or resorting to telemedicine. We have a lot of doctors that who just require more counseling basis, like our psychiatrists or psychologists, follow-ups are being done virtually. So we do have this. We, within our Congress and our lectures that we're having and seeing right now, is that we have different doctors, both local and international presenters, are sharing their experience in a clinical practice when it relates to different specialty. So we try to cover every specialty possible, except radiology, because we will have a Congress for radiology in November. That's all radiology. So that one was left out. But every other specialty we try to cover, and we have these doctors sharing, like I said, their clinical experiences, the review of literature, the contradicting literature, and how they see what best works for them. And so it's an interchange of knowledge, and it has been going well so far. Today was going to be our 4th day. Yesterday we had our psychiatrist, Dr. Martinez, presenting. It was touching for all of us because our doctors have become patients of mental disease because of COVID. And even before that, we have the burnt out, the fatigue syndrome, the moral injury. So all this, and the other doctors were sharing their experience. We had the pediatricians earlier in the week. Monday, we had Dr. Samos pointing out the signs and symptoms of our pediatric patients because as a result of the stress of COVID-19 and what to look out for. The sign of abuse in these children that were at first not at risk, but these children are locked up for almost 2 years with their mothers, who is equally frustrated as them. And so these children are at risk for abuse. So we are learning a lot with things that we've seen, the medicine, the treatment of COVID changing. And I remember in the beginning last year, we had hydrochloroquine as one of the medication on the top of the chart in Medscape. Medscape is one of the literature that most doctors review on a daily basis because they update every day as new medicine comes on. And it was hydrochloroquine was on, and we learned the doses, and the treatment and management of these patients. And then it just keeps changing and changing. Now hydrochloroquine is no longer deemed effective. We have seen the same thing go on for ivermectin. So we are in the Congress learning from each other, sharing experiences, and this was have always been about.
I think you noted something that prompted a question in terms of how difficult of a challenge has it been for medical practitioners to adapt to the changing approach in this field in terms of dealing with patients and just adapting overall. You made mention of certain stresses that doctors and medical practitioners are now going through. So how difficult of a challenge has it been to actually adapt?
Well, it is still a challenge, and many have not adapted adequately. We still have a lot of our medical practitioners crying in the bathroom between breaks and then coming out and talking to a patient as if nothing happened. I've had medical practitioners confessing to me that they feel bitter at the end of the day. Like every day is just going to work and trying to just to finish the shift. It's like a day-to-day basis. That is how bad things are with most of our medical practitioners right now.
Yeah, and in terms of the type of advice or the type of guidance that this Congress offers to doctors and medical practitioners in terms of adapting and in terms of the changing times, what does that look like?
Well, we have been working with our psychiatrist, Dr. Anel Martinez. We're trying to take away the stigma of mental health. We are, as medical professionals, we were trained in medical school that, you are supposed to be the strong one. It's okay, the nurses, you go and tell the patient what is wrong, the nurses will be the one to stay there and, show the compassion and cry with the patient if that's the need. But we were taught you're supposed to be robots. But that is okay to do, or that was not, it was never okay, but that was just the line of treatment. We were like put in this, like ready for war kind of thing, but in medicine. But no, because back in the past, you would go, you have your days, your vacation days that you can, go and relax and rewind and, get ready to come back. But lately, over 2 years, almost 2 years now, our medical staff has not been able to take any breaks. Vacations were being denied. They're required to work longer shifts, more patient load. So the coping has, the stress put on our medical practitioners does not allow for much coping because we don't have the time to cope with that after work. So we have resorted to our psychiatrist who has been giving us tips on how to deal with these stress. She's offered counseling. So we try to have sessions with her in the Medical Dental Association that we, a safe place to share what you're feeling and learning how to deal with it.
I would imagine that this Congress, and perhaps it was the same in 2020 if there was one, the types of conversations coming up are unlike conversations that has ever come up in previous Congresses, considering the COVID-19 pandemic and these unique times that we're living in. And one of the main concerns perhaps is the fact that medical practitioners are being overworked, having to work long shifts, as you've mentioned, and just that strain that is taking on them. What's the discussion like in terms of alleviating some of those burdens, in terms of some sort of backup or some sort of assistance in these fields, in these hospitals, to assist these medical practitioners with the overburden that they face?
That's the sad reality of it. Right now, we don't see anything in place. And we see the numbers. Some days it goes up, some days it goes down with the cases. And some days we say, all right, it might get better. We are looking at the trend worldwide. We are expecting to have a decrease in our cases by the end of the month, early next month. But this can change, because if the virus keeps on mutating, if our population does not adhere to the safety measures, this thing can go on for more years to come, because we have seen that they have been reinfection 2 to 3 times. So some reports that it is a less grave form of the disease, and while others report more serious. So because it is something new, we don't have enough data to make a definitive stance on how bad the reinfections will be. So this is something we want to say, okay, we said we have just washing hands, social distances, and wearing face masks. That was all we had. So when we saw the vaccine, we said, great, all right, this is the light. This is where we ended. And then we had the vaccine and we have it available, and then we have to fight with the misinformation being passed out to our population. And then they have the fear, because a lot of people criticize and say that the Ministry of Health has not done a good enough job, or have not done sufficient education and campaign for the vaccination, which I beg to differ. And a lot of our medical practitioners feel the same way, that we have done our part. We have doctors going all over, nurses encouraging their patients on each visit, but yet we have hesitancy. And with having unvaccinated, we have more chance of mutation of the virus, which would have a different strain of the virus to deal with in the future. So we're at a pace of frustration right now, I can tell you, from our medical community. And it's something that is not spoken about.
Yeah.
I see the other day that KHMH ward, the COVID ward, was featured, and that was very nice. You can see their pain and frustration. But we in the outskirts, in the regional hospitals, in the primary health clinics, they are also feeling a strain, because our COVID unit was created that requires a larger manpower. More staff was not hired for that. The same staff was stretched out into these areas. Then you have for example, in emergency room, I would usually have 3 nurses. Now I'm down to 1. So this puts a burden on each chain in the system, in the health clinics, in the polyclinics, or satellite clinics that they call them. Some days, because of the demand for manpower, these are closed. So when the doctor is out for a day or two working in the hospital, not at home because they don't get that luxury to get a vacation right now, you come back and you had the patients who are afraid to catch the bus, or they don't have money to take the bus or get a private vehicle to go to the hospital. So you have those patients for the past 2 days accumulated with the new ones who wanted to see the doctor today, and you don't turn them back because these are people who need medical attention. So this is a strain that is affecting every chain of the medical system, and it's something not talked about, and I am not sure how we're going to address it. It's not, the most we can do as a medical association is lobby with our partners in health, the Ministry of Health, which we have been trying to do, lobbying with the administration of hospitals to try to look after the best interest of their employees. I mean, right now it seems as if it's only the patients and trying to control the pandemic. Like, we need to fix this. You're at war. How you feel right now, deal with it. This is what a lot of our colleagues are complaining about.
And I'm glad that you said all of that just now, because you're right in that it does not get talked about enough in terms of like the actual details, in terms of the strain on the medical system as a whole. We see the COVID unit, but we don't necessarily see that, well, when this system is overwhelmed, there's a ripple effect. So I'm glad that you went into all of that. But I wanted to also ask you about something that Paul and I were actually speaking about in the beginning of the show. You had touched on the difficulty, or at least the constant changing of knowledge when it comes to treatment of COVID-19. But one of the other things that's also concerning is the long-term effects, which we're still learning about and which the medical community is still learning about. Can you talk a little bit about which difficulties arise in that respect? And I know that we also aired our story last night, which talked about one concern in the area of blood clots, but of course there must be several. So what is the medical community dealing with when it comes to the long-term treatment of COVID-19 patients?
Okay, so there's a lot of other conditions other than the blood clots that we have seen reported. We have the prolonged fatigue, which is one of the long haul syndrome of the COVID-19. That it's a constant fatigue that persons who previously were athletes, who would run miles per day, 3-4 miles per day, walking up a flight of stairs makes them very tired. There's this, I believe Dr. Martinez described it as a cloudiness of the brain, that they forget things. And it's reported, documented, and we're seeing how long this lasts, because they would be talking, a lot of patients would be talking to you, and then they get lost, they forget what they were talking about. They can't remember simple stuff that they become very forgetful, let's say that. We are seeing people afterwards with certain heart condition. We have the myocarditis that was been reported. So right now we're still looking. We've seen patients coming long after with what we call with strokes, and this could be because of the same blood clots causing this. We have, which would be still in a 90-day period. We want to say if this is a long haul or what, but we have within 90 days, we have patients showing up with psychiatric conditions, with mental illness. So it's change in behavior, so like acute psychosis is what we would just classify these patients as, and it would be the 90 days post-COVID. How long it lasts and how long after you can have it is still in the studies, but these are conditions that have been reported.
What is the discussion, if any at all, has happened surrounding the vaccine and booster shots?
Well, booster shots have been brought to our attention and have been discussed on just the surface, and it's recommended for persons who are immunocompromised, who are at higher risk if they get reinfected. How Belize is when in terms of the availability of booster shots, I cannot tell, because you can, as you all know, we have been running on a give-me-thank-you basis, right? So this is how we are at. If you look, and it's very sad, if you look at on a worldwide aspect, most third world countries are discouraging the booster shots, because we have frontline workers in many countries who have not been able to receive the first dose of any vaccine. So we have, you remember when we start rolling out vaccine, healthcare workers were the first, and then we did the elderly population at risk. Well, no, we have countries who haven't even had access to vaccines. And so we get these vaccines because the first world countries were ordering them, and they end up passing it on to us. Now, we have these countries who have not been able to acquire or procure these vaccines because they don't have the chance, because the first world countries are taking them up. So other than medical, it is a political, we have to look at the political aspect of it. And if we want to think about sharing vaccines, that's for a whole other discussion. We have not discussed that part within the association yet, but it is something definitely that I believe that Belize and a whole should be conscious about.
Okay, and Dr. Wright, as we are quickly running out of time, just to shift gears back to the Congress, if you can give our viewers an idea of what is left or upcoming for the rest of the Congress, and any final thoughts that you'd like to share.
Well, today we will have, we will continue with our Congress for the next 3 days. We have up to Saturday. We will be having different presentations, like I said, different specialties. We have tried to include a few topics because we always try to go in the team, but like last night, we did something with diabetic foot, and amputation. Today we will be looking at one of that in Belize, how for some studies that has been done, because we have a lot of amputations happening in Belize. So we will be looking at these limb amputation. We're having the acute respiratory distress syndrome in pregnancy. We do know that we have had several maternal deaths reported due to COVID, and one of the last aspect of it is the respiratory distress that we see these patients going through. So we're going to look at that in pregnancy, and that is what we see in COVID. We're going to see the relation between affectations of the teeth in pregnancy. So our dentists are encouraged to join also, and again, any medical professional, you can look at a pregnant woman, and they, other than getting fat and getting their foot swollen and eating a lot, they do have changes in their teeth, and that's something that we would be looking at. The physiological changes in pregnancy, then the impact of COVID-19 in the maxillofacial area, so how COVID-19 would affect the area of the mouth, the cheeks, the jawbones. So this is how another presentation, dermatological manifestations of COVID-19. Some people only have a rash, and somebody thinks that it's an allergy when in fact it was COVID or is COVID. I was one of that. My only manifestation was headache and a rash. Then later on Saturday, we'll be having Dr. Yakab, our oncologist in Belize, addressing the gaps in palliative care in oncology, because we have a lot of, and sadly in this time of COVID-19, we have a lot of our palliative patients who are still in a lot of pain at home, unable to go to the hospital, don't want to go to the hospital because of the emergency room and the fear of COVID. So what are the gaps that could be filled for these patients? And a lot of times, the palliative care, we have a lot of these in Belize, and palliative care is on the back burner for a large part, not to say the least. So this will be addressed, and since it's going to involve medical professionals of all levels, we hope to learn and see what we can implement and take home for the best of these patients. We will continue on Saturday with more psychiatric manifestations of COVID-19. Like I told you, we have some patients coming with acute psychosis. So we will learn more about that in this session on Saturday. And our last one will close off with a panel discussion with some of our public health experts to see how we can prepare or confront another pandemic if we should see one in our lifetime. Or just, if we can come up with some guidelines that could be in place, even if it's not for us, but for future generations to come.
All right. Well, Dr. Wright, thank you so much for coming in and sharing all about, a whole lot, not just the Congress. So we certainly wish you all the best with the rest of the Congress, and thanks again.
Thank you.
All right. But with that, we're going to be taking a short break, and when we come back, we are going to be shifting gears, talking about some sweet treats. And you don't want to miss that, so please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor, and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
When something is good and you can save, that makes it even better. Like this guy, he buys Flex bundles using his promo credit. No worries when his primary credit is finished. He gets talk, text, and data for free. Or her, she calls her family internationally with her promo credit. And with data packages so affordable, she even does video calls. Smart continues to offer great deals and affordable promotions. As a small business owner, she saves when she uses her promo credit to call the other guys. All Smart customers enjoy more triple days and knowing they can use their promo credit, which just lasts longer. Smart, bringing people together.
Vaccines protect you and they protect me. Getting vaccinated is one of the most important things you can do to keep yourself and your family safe and healthy. Once enough people are immunized, opportunities for an outbreak of disease becomes very low. And if we all choose to get vaccinated, we contribute in getting back to spending quality time with our loved ones in a safe way.
If you have a baby on the way, here is what you need to know about maternity benefit. It includes both an allowance for 14 weeks and a grant, which is a lump sum of $300. The basic requirements are: you must be employed, you must have at least 50 paid contributions, and you must have continuous contributions leading up to delivery. To apply, a licensed doctor certifies the expected date of delivery. The employer completes the salaries record. Submit your completed claim form as soon as possible. After giving birth, submit your continuation claim no later than 3 weeks after delivery. If the mother does not qualify, the father of the child may qualify for the maternity grant. Want to know more about maternity benefit or grant? Visit our website or contact any of our offices to have someone assist you. Also, be sure to visit our Facebook page and give us a like to stay informed. Social Security Board, safeguarding you, your family, your future.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we're getting our third conversation for this morning started. And we've got an array of great looking sweet treats in front of us. We are joined by Baked, and we've got Kelsey and Eros Dawson, who are the owners of Baked, and they're going to be telling us all about what they've got coming up for this season and some of the great treats that they've got. So good morning, guys.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, welcome
Good
back
morning.
to our show, of course.
Thanks for having us.
No, well, we love having you here, and I always love having sweets in the studio. So, you can come back as much as you want. All right. But of course, we're here to talk about a bunch of what you guys have going on for the season. Of course, it's Halloween, as we've got our nice jack-o'-lantern here.
Yeah.
What have you guys been up to at Baked recently?
Well, again, I'd like to turn you all over to the real creative genius in the kitchen. I kind of stand in as security guard at some points in time, and I roast the coffee, but she can give you a lot more details on these items.
Well, we try to do treats and snacks that are trending and that people are demanding. So of course, once October started, everyone's asking for their pumpkin spice and everything nice. So we do offer our pumpkin spice lattes and coffee drinks all year round. So you can come in there and get it whenever you want. Of course, it's more popular right now. And last year we did the pumpkin spice cheesecake. That's the one we have here. And we did some pumpkin spice donuts. Instead of the cinnamon sugar, it's pumpkin spice and sugar. And then the other ones are filled with pumpkin, like a cream cheese pumpkin filling, and on top it's caramel and pecans. So we brought a piece of our pecan pie. That's a popular one too for us. And our other cheesecake, our brownie cheesecake, and our chocolate chip cookie cheesecake. So besides that, the breads that you see on the sides, those are our basics every day. Our artisan bread. So we have our white bread, our honey oat wheat. We do burger buns and sandwich baguettes. they're not like traditional baguettes with the hard, crusty shell. What we found is that with our customers, for the sandwiches and stuff, people prefer that softer, chewy bread, so that's what we do. Then over there we have our cheddar jalapeno loaf, which we do in a mini version too. So that one you can also get it with bacon, but some people don't like meat. So, but and the other one, that's new for us. I had a customer that her kids are they're vegan. They can't have any animal products, so she wanted a cinnamon bread. But of course, a lot of our cinnamon products have butter or milk or eggs. So that one is completely vegan. The bread is vegan. The filling it doesn't have any butter, any milk, any eggs. So that's our cinnamon swirl bread. But you can get it with butter if you like. And like those products, like everything else, whatever we don't do at Bake, you just ask us and we'll do it. We do a lot of custom orders, whatever. The thing is that we can do a lot more, but the demand isn't really there, or maybe people don't know that we're doing it. So as long as we get our custom orders, we make it. We fill any order anyone has. We get orders for sourdough loaves.
The traditional baguette.
Yeah, and all sorts of breads. So.
That was going to be my question. When you first started off and you were talking about the cheesecake, you were saying, that you try to keep up with what people are wanting or what may be trending. So, do you create are these original recipes that you come up with?
I like to tell people I went to the University of YouTube and Pinterest. So yes, I do a lot of research. I call it research, but I read a lot of recipes and then I put together from different ones, or I experiment in the kitchen and stuff. They're not always come up, but I have a lot of taste testers and a lot of critics.
It doesn't show on either.
So yeah, but by the time it gets out there in our showcase, it's because it's been tried and tested and tasted, and we reach a point. Sometimes I even it's hard to do it again because you have to be taking notes when you're creating stuff. But
and it's not just, we find that it's not just the recipe on the the ingredients and all that, but it's actually the way we put it together, and that's kind of a tricky part.
And that's what I always tell Eros. It's not that I can't take all the credit for a lot of stuff. I don't think I'm that creative as he says. I think anybody can do it. Anybody can do it, and that's kind of what you guys wanted us to come and show you guys how to make a cheesecake. But for me, it was a little bit complicated to do on TV, and it's very messy when we do it because it's a lot. It's like the pumpkin spice cheesecake. It's like 2 or 3 things that you have to mix and put together, and it's a little bit tedious. So.
Well, I think I've made a cheesecake before, and I know how messy it can be, which is why I'm glad that we got places like Baked where you can just order. You can order one, or you could just walk in and get a slice if you're in the mood for something sweet. So, how has the feedback been from customers when you introduce something like, the pumpkin spice?
Very good. And like I said, people we have a lot of people that follow trends and are trendy, and they're gonna try it. And I mean, anything pumpkin spice is just delicious. So, right. So everyone will at least try it once, and then they get hooked, so they come back.
And you've got not only cheesecake, you've made the donuts with it as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What's the experience like for our customers when they go to Bake and they get to try this? What is it that they can accompany it with in terms of different products you have as well?
Well, we bake bread fresh daily, every day. So if you come there, you can have a cup of coffee, you can have a smoothie, we have fresh juices, and you can get your sandwiches, your gourmet sandwiches on freshly baked bread. A lot of times I feel bad because we have to be telling customers, well, your sandwich will be like 10 minutes longer because the bread is still in the oven, so you're getting fresh bread.
Right. And you find that people come in and they sit down and they actually take the time to relax and enjoy.
Well, when they can, when we can have people come in and sit down, and yes, and that has affected us because our goal at Bake was not only to produce really, really good food and treats, but also the experience of coming in there, sitting down, you know, you can do your work, you can come with friends or whatever, and it's an entire experience when you come to bake. But we were just COVID, I guess.
Yeah. I'm really interested in the artisan breads, you know, that are, you know, made fresh daily. What's the process? Well, how early does the process start, or how does the process start? You know, to start making fresh bread. And I know you guys are open from pretty early.
6:30.
6:30. So yeah. So what's the typical process like? Because it's not just one type of bread either.
What we do, most of the breads you'll find them fresh, like after 12 afternoon. But if you want a loaf, like we've had people say, okay, well, I want a fresh bread at 9, then we would bake it earlier. But what we've noticed is that people like to take fresh bread home in the evening. So they have it in the evening, or I guess they have it for breakfast or anything like that. But
and in the mornings, well, usually they're really early, like around 5:30. And what we do is try to do a schedule so that if somebody's coming in to get breakfast items, they're getting a fresh batch, and that's our typical the white loaves and the baguettes. And then later on we have the schedules to do like the other artisanal breads. So we try to keep it on a schedule like that so as to always have fresh bread every day. Yeah.
Awesome. And then you also, I mean, I think the more the range and the variety is also interesting. You know, these are pretty creative and, as you said, custom made. So you know, how much of it, you know, your products are like based on, let's say, demand, and how much is it like ideas maybe that you guys have?
I think it's a really good balance. I would say 50-50, because a lot of times people order something specifically for them that they want, and then we would have it out, and another customer would come and see it and say, oh, I would like that. Or customers, like I had one customer that liked our brownies, and he liked our cheesecake and our red velvet cake. So he's like, that's my wife's favorite 3 desserts, and it's her birthday, so can you make one product from all? So I said, okay. So we did a layer of brownie, a layer of cheesecake, a layer of red velvet cake, and then we topped it and decorated it. And now it's been 3 years, and every year for her birthday he orders that cake.
And well, now I think I'm imagining in my head when you're talking about it. It must be great.
To be honest, all this talking of food now has me excited. Hungry, definitely. I think the time has come. I'm getting indications for us to take a taste.
Definitely.
Are we able to?
Yes, of course.
We are. Right, great, because all of this talking without tasting.
Just be careful, because you'll be over there at the cafe after this. That's for sure.
That's not a bad thing if it tastes right. So what we'll do is we'll taste, we'll get some tasting in, and find out really what this pumpkin spice cheesecake is all about.
Yeah, I know, that's the one I'm most excited about. And there we go.
Yeah, we need a knife.
We've got our stuff coming.
Yeah.
A knife.
All right. But while we wait for our utensils, what do you have a favorite that you like to eat or make, or both?
That's not fair. I really don't. I enjoy making everything, and I enjoy watching people enjoy what we make.
But I'm sure Eros, you have a favorite, because you're the official taster, right?
Yeah, I am definitely the guinea pig here, and I enjoy it. But I was going to mention before too as well that they all start off as kind of like we're experimenting, right? I know you asked the question earlier. They kind of all start that way, and then as we go along, we pick our favorites, we pick the things that people like, and we try to infuse our little twist to it and put it out there. But I mean, I can't even, and there's a lot of stuff that's not on the menu. I mean, she does an amazing blueberry muffin crumble. That thing is amazing, and it's unfortunately we couldn't bring it out here today, but there's quite a few items that have been done. And I also wanted to mention, I mean, we offer breakfast all day. So you can come in the evening and have breakfast, and it's become a trend. That's kind of cool, because I'm a breakfast person, and I just wanted to kind of segue into that.
What does breakfast look like at Baked?
Oh, it's amazing. We have like waffles, we have our traditional fried jacks and Johnny cakes. So we also do eggs a million different ways, and you can customize your stuff. And that's one of the things we pride ourselves with, because a lot of people, everybody has their own taste. Everybody's unique in what they like. Yes, we might use some of the same ingredients, but we try to customize things for everybody.
All right.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're about to be tasting this cheesecake. It looks great.
I mean, I hate to destroy such a beautiful cheesecake with a knife, but at the same time, how else can you
that's what it was made for.
Exactly.
And then another thing that I did want to mention, because Paula and I were saying right before we got started, just the smell alone of all of this of this food is amazing. So when you go into Baked, the experience is even you'd have that same experience. So I'm really with all that to say that I'm really excited because I've been thinking about food, I guess, non-stop for the past like 15-20 minutes since they got set up.
Yeah.
And the pumpkin itself, it kind of, I mean, we're kind of on Halloween, but it kind of reminds you of Christmas, the Christmas season coming too, right?
Yeah, and you got a very reasonable portion. Oh, that's for me. All right.
All right, let's go. All right, we're gonna do the taste test. And cheesecake, as I said.
What's the best way to eat it? Is to get everything in, right?
Actually,
with your hands.
Just get a little bit of everything. The caramel, the pecans. But actually, after like reading about cheesecakes and how to make them the best time to eat a cheesecake is after it's like a day old.
Oh, really?
Because that's when the flavors sit. So you're usually supposed to like have it sit in your fridge for like 24 hours and then serve it.
This one is not a day old.
No. I wanted it to look fresh when it came on TV.
All right, no, I took a moment. That was really, really good. The amount of the different flavors that hit is really awesome, because you get the sweetness which you expect from a cheesecake, but then you definitely taste the pumpkin, and then you also taste the spices, you got your cinnamon and
actually,
caramel. Yeah,
it has caramel. It's like a combination of pecan pie and pumpkin pie cheesecake, and the crust actually has besides the regular graham cracker crust that you get in a cheesecake, it has pecans in there too.
Oh, okay, great. So see, so you get the nuts, spices, caramel, sugar, everything. Yeah, this is really great. I love cheesecake. So I mean, I could like easily just like say, let's stop and I'll just continue eating. But since we got to keep the show going, so
we're still on the show,
right? Paul was over there.
Don't worry, we still have time.
I think Paul was over there enjoying, it's really good. So pumpkin spice cheesecake, definitely recommend.
And we have all the pumpkin spice drinks: pumpkin spice latte, pumpkin spice fraps, pumpkin spice iced coffee. I mean, we have it all.
Okay.
We even had a pumpkin this year because I can't leave without mentioning my 13-year-old son Riley actually carved that pumpkin.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, we had to showcase it.
Yeah, it looks good. I thought this was like a pumpkin you got somewhere, but
No, he did it himself. He's like, please bring me a pumpkin, and he did it.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Okay. So you know what? Before we do, these are the pumpkin spice donuts.
Yeah, those with the pecans on top are filled, and then these are just like the sugar donuts, but with pumpkin spice instead of.
I'm gonna try one of these too, because I mean these are like cheesecake donuts, more or less like my two favorite sweet treats. So I'll try a bite. Really good. Again. Sweetness and like a regular donut that you'd expect, but you definitely get the pumpkin spice in there.
I like that look on his face. Look at him.
That's amazing.
He's in another world.
That's amazing.
I should have brought the coffee this time, but you can always get that fresh. It's always paired. nicely with a cheesecake or a donut.
Yeah, well, you know, you can take it from us and you can listen from us, or you could just go down to Bake and get the experience for yourself, because I definitely recommend it. I mean, sweets alone, I mean, I have a big sweet tooth, and that's going to be my number one thing that I always do. But, you know, of course, the artisan breads, which are baked fresh daily, are another thing if you're interested. And then, as you said, also, you can get custom orders.
Yeah, so we have a couple people, I know people are looking in after their health a lot more now, so we make like whole grain bread also. We, like I mentioned, the sourdough has really good health benefits too, with all the probiotics in them.
We make our own bagels, whole grain bagels as well.
Bagels, English muffins.
Yeah.
One of our major goals at Bake when we started was to make as much things as we could make in-house. So
which is pretty much everything.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work, and sometimes it's a little bit it costs a little bit more to make the things, but we like I always tell people, whenever I make a cake, I make it exactly the way I'd make it for home. So I don't try to use cheaper ingredients or materials or stuff. I make it exactly the way I would make it for home. So like even our cookies, we have our chocolate chip cookies and our oatmeal cookies. People are always asking how come these taste so different than what they're used to, and I'm like, I don't know. We just make it the best way we know how, and we make everything in-house. So like when you get a sandwich, our fries, they're not frozen fries. We get the potatoes, we peel them, we do everything in-house.
A lot of people have asked, like, why would you start up a project like this? And what was the reasoning behind it? And it's like, I mean, it's exactly what she's saying. We want to give exactly what we would enjoy at home. And it's the same thing with the coffee. It's hard to run around town to get a nice fresh roasted cup of coffee, and that's something that I was always passionate about, and that's why we take the extra steps, roasting our own coffee and keeping it fresh. And I mean, the taste tells it all, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I was about to say. Like, and if ever you get that question about why did you start, you should just give them some food and then you get the answer right away.
Just try it, or smell it. Maybe down SJC you can smell when the coffee is roasting.
No, absolutely. It's no, great stuff that you guys have. But you know, we are just about out of time. But if you just for the benefit of some of our viewers, you can say where is Baked, if you guys are on social media, how do they find you? So just share that quick bit before we go.
Yeah, well, we're definitely on all platforms, Facebook, Instagram as Baked, and you can find us. There's a sign right after the roundabout by the municipal airport on Princess Margaret Drive. There's a little coffee cup, says Baked, and it has an arrow. It's at the corner of H and 17th Street in Kings Park. So it's right here in the center of town, and you can catch us at 6:30 in the morning every day. Sundays is our only break, and sorry guys, but every other day, 6:30 in the morning until 6 in the evening.
All right. Well, Eros and Kelsey, thank you for coming in. Thank you for the cheesecake and donuts. I appreciated it.
Thank you.
But of course, you know, we want to thank you for coming in and showing. Again, you know, we love having you on the show. And, you know, we hope that if you guys are watching it and you're interested, definitely head down to Bake if you want some sweet treats and some good baked good and some coffee.
Forgot to mention the numbers. You can WhatsApp or call 627-8338 or 223-2251. And place your orders ahead of time if you like.
Yeah. There we go. All right. So that was Baked, and we are going to be taking another short break. And when we come back, we are going to be having our wrap up. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
At Fuse Bistro Limited, we care about the well-being of your family and the environment. Our Your Caribbean style restaurant features a wide variety of tropical lunches, gourmet dinners, Fuse granola, organic coffee, infused sangrias, margaritas, and martinis, and much more for you to enjoy. Find our organic food products at Belizon, Bistro, Grab on the Go, and stores in San Ignacio and Santa Elena. WhatsApp us at 624-0500 for deliveries. Fused Bistro Limited, pure and natural.
It's Freaky Friday. Every Friday in October, you can double up from $1 to $39 and triple up with $40 or more. All treats only with Smart.
The TV you love is always with you, from live TV, sports, and on-demand titles. Choose your plan today. Plans start as low as $15 per month. My TV, entertainment, anytime, anywhere.
Imagine going through your entire day without the burden and risk of carrying cash on you. Belize's shift to digital wallets has begun with eCash. We can now skip the cash when collecting money or paying for our essentials, all while using a fast, easy, and secure platform. Simply add funds to your wallet via bank transfer or at an agent, and you're good to go. You will be able to make quick, easy payments simply by scanning QR codes. And best of all, it all happens just like that. Payments are as easy as clicking a link online or scanning a QR code. Download the eCash app from the Google Play and Apple App Store today and take your first step into a cashless lifestyle. The future is here with eCash. For more information, visit www.e-cash.com or contact us via WhatsApp at 613-0257 to find out more.
And we're back. And if you're joining us right now, we're just getting our show wrapped up. We want to say thank you to all our guests. We started off with a conversation with Honorable Orlando Habet, talking about the preparations for COP26. The delegation is heading out this week, so that was a great conversation to start off with.
Yeah, so that was definitely good. Minister Habet informed us that he leaves next week, Tuesday. Some members of the delegation, including the Prime Minister, may be leaving either today or tomorrow. And then I know we have some members of the media also in that delegation, and they're expected to leave on Sunday. So I say that to say that throughout the course of next week and the following week, we will be having updates for you, daily updates on how COP26 is going and what is coming out of that. We have our very own Dwayne Moody out of the newsroom, who will be in Glasgow for COP26. And so we look forward to that, and we look forward to those updates next week. And then in our second segment, we had with us the president of the Belize Medical and Dental Association, Dr. Wright, and she spoke to us about their annual Congress, and this one is focusing on medicine and COVID-19. That was also a very insightful conversation, looking at what our medical practitioners are going through as it relates to treating patients with COVID and as it relates to their own stresses within the medical profession, and even as it relates to medicines that are constantly developing in terms of treating COVID-19 and COVID-19 patients.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to say thank you to Dr. Wright. And finally, I want to say thank you to Baked for coming in and telling us all about a bunch of their treats. As you can see, we still have an array of stuff. And a special thanks just for letting us taste, because you know, Paul and I were both a little bit distracted during the segment and the break just now, trying to eat some of the cheesecake and donuts and some of the stuff they've got. So definitely is good. So you want to go down there if you have a sweet tooth, or if you want anything baked, or you want a nice cup of coffee. So that's our show for this morning. And if you want to contact us, you can send us an email at oie@channel5belize.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and Instagram at OIE Belize. But that's it for now until tomorrow morning when you open your eyes.
And start your morning right.
And until then, keep your mind, your eyes, and your heart
open.
Enjoy your day, Belize, and we'll see you soon.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.